Coming to you from a portable microphone, this is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and Creative CIrcus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast, which we are just going to continue to produce, as if there's like more than one of me, forever, for as long as I can continue to talk and have these conversations with people that I respect, like, and in this case also miss. And it's just a great day for me to be able to see Liz again. I don't know when we saw each other last. It was probably some alumni party.
It was a wedding.
A wedding?
I think it was like Kyle and Brittany's wedding.
Kyle and Brittany weddings here in Atlanta. And now everybody's got babies. Everybody's got little babies. Liz graduated from the Creative CIrcus 10 years ago. That would make it 2008. If you're listening to this in the distant future, the 10 years will no longer hold up. But as we're recording this, it's 10 years ago. So that's 2008. Went directly to Sidley in Montreal, Canada. Nice. She went to Quebec, and then they shipped them off to Amsterdam, which is just really cool. And I do want to talk a little bit about the experience of different cultures. And then after Sidley, landed for a bit at TBWA Chiat in Los Angeles before a short stint at Deutsch, then up north to Venables, Bell and Partners, and then back to TBWA /Chiat/Day, where you've been for a good solid 3 years working on Netflix and Airbnb. At Venables, you worked on Intel, Audi, and Reebok. Deutsch with some PlayStation work. Look at these clients. Holy shit, really with these clients. Pepsi, Red Bull, City of Amsterdam, Adidas Originals Global Campaign. I mean, this is some awesome... When you're sitting here as a copywriter, did you imagine this was going to be the list of things you worked on 10 years out? And first of all, welcome back. Welcome back. It's
really
great to
be back.
You look like you haven't aged a day.
Oh, sweet. I had no idea that that's what I was going to land on working on. I thought I would maybe get a job in in Atlanta.
In Atlanta?
Yeah, I thought that's kind of where I would be able to work, and I was like, if I'm lucky, maybe New York or San Francisco. And
so when you were here, were you interning at 22 Squared, or were you actually like freelance? Like, I mean, what's the difference?
They treated it the same. We were technically freelancers, but
so you were a team.
Mm-hmm, that was our first like professional job together. Was
cool.
At 22 Squared, and they held off on making us a job offer, until we got another one. So from Sidley, and then by that time we had the dreams of living abroad in our brains. So there was like no way that we were going to stay and not take that opportunity.
So we talked, you and I, at lunch briefly about that first job. So put yourself back in the mindset of being like an eighth quarter copywriter. You've got your partner and boyfriend, and you're looking for a job as a team. Was there a big emphasis with you guys, now husband, was there a big emphasis for you guys on going to like a great place? Did you feel that pressure of having to make that first great big move? Because I mean, Sidley at that time was pretty baller. I mean, this was a place that was, for those of you who might not know the name or are familiar with Sidley, it was really, it was an up-and-coming agency with a reputation for doing kind of groundbreaking international, exciting work. They'd done work for Cirque du Soleil and some other stuff that was...
Yeah, they had just won the Adidas Originals account, and they're just doing some really just cool work that was really grounded in youth culture at the time.
So back to the question, was it important? Were there other offers? Was there this goal to get this great first job, or was it like, wow, we have a job offer? And
it was that. I think our focus was just making sure our work was as great as it possibly could be, so that if we did get a great opportunity, we were able to, like, if somebody like Sidley was able to look at our work, we had the stuff there that answered what they were looking for. Right. But we weren't aiming for a specific agency. I think we were just aiming for a job offer anywhere.
Right. I think there's two kinds of students. I think there's they're like, I just want a job. Yeah. And I think there's good and bad about that mentality. I think part of that is great because you're not discounting anything and you're not holding out for something. But on the other hand, I think it does help a little bit. And you guys were like this. I mean, I remember your group being pretty savvy about knowing what agencies were doing what. So you don't want to just be ignorant and say, oh, the first person that will ask me out, I'll go out with them.
Right.
But I think there's a student that will take whatever. And then there's the student who I think feels like there's this massive pressure to get there's almost as much emphasis on where you go to your first job as there was for where you go to college and who you're going to marry and all that kind of stuff. And we were talking about this earlier do you agree when I said that it's not that important?
I agree. It's not that important.
Do you think that Sidley informed, and this is another question I was going to ask you later about just every move you've made, but were there things that you learned at Sidley that were valuable lessons for you? And was there work that you did there that laid the groundwork for later opportunities?
Yes, to both. I think at the time Sidley was such a hot shop that a lot of other recruiters were poaching creative from Sidley. So that definitely helped us get the next job. I think the creative culture of Sidley at the time was so different from what I experienced at the circus of the circus is you get the brief, quote unquote, and then you go off and you concept and then you come back and you present it. Whereas Sidley was just straight up chaos of sometimes you got to brief and sometimes you were,
were you even clear what the problems were sometimes?
Not always. It's just they are so creatively driven that sometimes things just came out of just riffing with your other creatives, and then the strategist would come up with a brief to sell it to the clients.
That's crazy.
So it was just so different than anything that I experienced, but I'm glad I experienced. I don't know if it was the best first job for a junior because it's just there was no hand holding and it was really unsettling at first, but I turned out to be great in the long run.
Well, unsettling, was it crippling? Was it enabling? How did you and Steven or Steve? I never know.
He goes by both.
Cope with that part of it. Was it? It's interesting. I hate to speak for anyone else, especially for my wife, because I tend to butcher her experience. It's always through my own lens. But her first job she would tell you, was the wrong place to start as well, because it was a place that the creative teams kind of ran their own pieces of business and there wasn't a whole lot of oversight and they worked directly with clients. It's an amazing place for a second job, third job, but there wasn't really a structure for a junior to come in and say, hey, here's how things go. So when things were as chaotic as they were and you weren't because you're used to this times, even in school you have a 1 week and then a second week. And how did you guys deal with it? I'm talking about emotionally. How did you handle that part of it? Was it
hard.
Exciting?
And I think
hard. Okay.
It's hard for me. I think some creatives probably just would have lavished in it, but I'm always going to be a creative that loves structure and process. And so with that said, it's really good that I experienced this kind of environment. I think I coped with it because I had my best friend right there with me to kind of talk me through it. Right. But I think it was a hard environment for a junior because if I had already been out in the industry for a few years, knowing what it takes to push work through, I would have been able to navigate the chaos to get it through. Yeah. But if you're like me and you needed a lot of structure, I didn't know how to, we'd have these amazing ideas. It's just, it's a graveyard of great ideas that just died because there wasn't a structure at Sidley in place that kind of helped sell it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I don't think that juniors or students for sure realize that there has to be sort of a scaffolding built on which to flesh out things for clients to understand what it is that they're buying. It's not just a matter. Maybe they do. I mean, that's kind of pejorative for me to say that because I think people do realize what a brief does. But a brief is your best weapon, and I think that structure and order are your only sort of protection against we don't like it. It's you don't like it because it's not answering the question, or you don't like it because it's subjective for some reason. It goes back to the thing that the Samsung piece that you guys did, right? You were thinking about that,
yeah.
So for the listeners that don't know, so Liz, you showed this thing at Forum that was this just insane commercial for this high I'm going to say it was a Samsung super high-powered battery-operated
$1,000
cleaning machine.
robot
like
vacuum
a Roomba.
cleaner.
Yeah, robot vacuum cleaner. But this spot was about as over the top as you could get it. It was a party with horses and motorcycles and monkeys playing piano and people running around covered in like powder or flour and things were breaking and the client was approving things not knowing what they were approving, and then the client saw it and they're like, what the hell, no way.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where like, well, is this not really saying what you want to say? And then they kind of warmed up to it after showing it around. But I think that having a brief that they had approved is probably your best weapon to get that sold.
Yeah. I mean, we were doing everything we could to make sure that they understood what they were buying. They were even on set and they were like part of the whole process. So I'm not quite sure how so much got lost in translation, but I think that's a great example of just because it's a great example of how hard it is for non-creative types to envision a creative idea. Mm-hmm. And I struggle with this throughout my career because no matter how clear I think I'm being with trying to bring the idea I have in mind to life in another person's mind, it is a very, very big challenge.
I'm not sure it's possible. I don't care how good you are.
Yeah.
So listeners, you can make sure you go to the Facebook page because that's where a link to you can see this work on the website. It's trying to remember what it is.
Liz and Steve
Creatives.com. Liz and Steve Creatives.com. If you don't want to go to the Facebook page and see where there's already a link. So you left Chiat Day, went to Deutsch, I should say, then went north and then came back. What was it that you missed about Chiat Day, TBWA Chiat Day that pulled you guys back?
It was less about Chiat and more about Los Angeles. Venables is always going to be my dream agency. It's the closest thing that I experienced to the creative environment I had at the circus of just like ideas being celebrated and loved and championed. And it was fun. It was a really hard decision to leave Venables.
Why do you think Venables, Bell, and Partners was that way? Was it the clients, the leadership, the creative team? What was it about that place that made it special, do you think?
I think that they are independent. That had a huge role. That like they were just allowed to pick their clients. They were allowed to have honest conversations with the staff. We always all felt part of the agency. Like I would never really felt that disconnected from the decisions that were being made. I usually always knew, even though I was just a senior there, but I usually always knew why decisions were being made because Paul or Will were really honest about.
That's cool.
And I don't know. I think it's just the spirit that they fostered, and they also always put their people first.
It's really interesting because I was reminds me of this time I visited New York a few years ago and visited an old friend who works for a big agency. And the way they're set up is they have like big open space with kind of desk cubicles. But they shift him around based on projects. And he kept referring to them. He was saying, well, they may be moving us over this way and they may be shuffling it up next week and we're waiting to hear if they're going to do this. And it's like, there's always this they that's coming down from like some mysterious higher office. This is a massive agency that's part of a big holding group. And I don't know, I'd love your opinion on this. I don't know how much it affects a first job, whether you should consider not going to the place because it's not an independent agency. But when you get to be in a senior position or ACD like you are now, and you mentioned this, and I don't know how many students understood this at Forum when you said that they don't have to answer to something else. And that something else is normally a holding group that's looking at the bottom line that has nothing, you said this, has nothing to do with the creative process or making good work. And the pressure that the senior people are under, the ECDs are under, to perform and save money and get things sold and win new business, it's a grueling, horrible, I think it's a horrible position for them to be in. And it trickles down to the creative teams. And every time I've ever had a conversation like this with someone who works at a Richards group or they're independent.
Richards Group is.
Yeah.
Okay.
They always come back to the fact that we make our own decisions. The reason that they're good is because they have those visionaries in place that are enabled to do the small things that are significant things, I think. So do you think that would make a difference at a first job? Like if someone were to go to a big agency for the first job, is it necessarily a bad thing to work for WPP or an Omnicom?
It's not bad because I think just learning how the mechanics of advertising, those are in place in those big holding group kind of agencies. And you get to see how the machine works. And I don't think until you know how the machine works that you're going to know how to navigate around it. Right. So for me, I think that would have been a healthy first job, but
that's a good point.
I don't think it's hard for me because Sidley was so informative of who I am as a creative now that I can't discount what.
Who owns Sidley?
They were independent at the time.
Okay.
I think a Japanese company bought them. Okay. I think, but
I just never thought. As a junior, just none of these conversations would ever cross my mind. No. Like who owns them and what's the holding group going to be? I just don't think it mattered then. But I think that what you don't know is that it does.
it affects a lot. I think it just depends what you need as a junior. I could have probably used a little more hand holding, but I guess I'm glad I didn't have it because it forced me to grow up a lot creatively.
This may be one of the more controversial topics I've ever discussed on here. I've never taken a stance against something like a holding company before. If anybody's listening to this who works for a WPP or an Omnicom and disagrees, please comment on the Facebook page because I'm really, really curious to know the upside of that. Other than the fact that you're in a network where you can move, that's kind of cool. Like you could be in LA and then you could go work in the New York office and all that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously they have heft and weight. So what do you think were the valuable lessons personally as a writer and a creative and a human being that you took away from each of your stops so far? Sidley, Venables, Deutsch.
I think any lesson that I try to retain came really from the people I was working with. It was less about creative and more about what kind of person I wanted to be in advertising. I worked with some really, really great creative directors who demonstrated how I wanted to work with integrity and kindness. So I think the lessons I gained were just kind of just personal interactions from people that I really respected.
That's cool. Are you not kind by nature?
I'm kind, but I said, I'm the youngest of 3 kids, and I love
scrappy and loud.
Yeah, and I think acting with my heart first isn't in the realm of advertising. Isn't my instinct, but I have always been more successful when I just kind of just act with kindness.
Birth order is fucked up, isn't birth order? Birth order informs so much. So I live in a house there's 4 of us in the house. Mm-hmm. There's only one of us who lives in that house who wasn't the firstborn. So I don't think that the other 3 of us can really understand what it's like to ever not feel like the pressure of responsibility or have to be loud to be noticed or feel competitive and jealous of an older sibling. All of those things are foreign notions to me, my wife, and my daughter, because we were all firstborn. And then we have my son who his behavior, I understand a lot of it because he and I are alike, but I'm super curious about how the world is seen through radically different eyes and try to learn that empathy, even from my own child. It's a great foil, a great lesson for me. I don't know.
I think it's all, it does inform a lot. My oldest brother is just did everything. He's just the perfect child.
He felt pressure to be that, I'm sure.
I don't think we've really had too much of a conversation of how his birth order affected the way he acted, but he's so responsible. He's saving, my parents are saving for their own, they're retired, but how, when they need care and stuff like that, they're saving and preparing for that. But Jamie is so responsible. He's saving for that as well. He's
for them.
For them. He's that responsible.
Yeah. I think that the firstborn is the only child who acutely absorbs the expectations of the parents, because when the second one comes, there's already another one that they're dealing with.
Yeah. That makes sense.
This is, the psychology portion of this podcast is now going to move on to the next section. Sorry about that. So Do you consider yourself creative? Because you had said earlier that you don't feel like you're that creative. I don't know if you're being self-deprecating or honest about that. Do you consider yourself? Are you creative, not just a creative?
Yeah, I think I am creative.
Yeah, I think you
it's changed over time where I put that creativity. Like when I entered the school, I loved writing, and then it kind of started shifting into photography, and now I'm starting to dabble in pottery.
Oh, cool!
But I think I am creative, and I'm always going to love using like I said, I love using creativity to solve problems.
Right,
so I think I'm just as much of a problem solver as I am a creative. So it's like that's why this industry has always been great for me, because that's kind of what it is.
This industry is so fun because if you work at a place that has good planning and you work with a client who's self-aware, all we have to do is creatively execute something we already have sort of the scaffold. We already know what the thing we're supposed to do, and then we can just have fun within that.
Yeah.
Writing jokes or being heartfelt or being observant.
Yeah, I think that's something that gets lost a lot in what we do, is that what we do is supposed to be fun.
It's supposed to be.
Yep.
It's supposed to be. So go talk about your fun theory.
So if I look at the work that I made and what I'm most proud of, it's the projects that I had just a ton of fun on. And I think it shows in the work because people have fun watching it. At least I hope they have fun watching or experiencing it. So I guess the fun theory is that if you're having fun and the clients are having fun, it's going to show in the work itself.
Absolutely. Are you having fun now?
I'm having more fun than I thought I would. Now that I'm starting to relax.
Okay, so my own experience of having a 10-month-old was distraction. I was distracted having a 10-month-old. Do you find yourself pulled to your son like mentally during the day?
Oh, yeah.
Has the parenting been a struggle early on?
Parenting has been more, and I wouldn't call it a struggle, but it is so much harder than, I mean, I knew it was going to be hard. Everybody tells you raising kids it's really hard, but nothing can prepare you for just how hard it is. The grind of every single day of not having a single moment to yourself is like...
They suck. Babies suck. The good thing about babies is they're temporary and they turn into the coolest things in the world. They turn into kids. And you're close, man. You're 10 months. You're close.
Yeah, it's just crazy to see like his personality come out. I'm like, who is this little person?
Do you have a supportive group at work?
Yeah. I think I'm lucky to become a mom in advertising during a time where culturally there's a huge push to be supportive of mothers. So I feel like I have coworkers who understand that I need to leave every day at 5:15 because I have to go relieve the nanny, and like that I'm really not as available as I used to be. I think the advantage, Stephen and I, being a creative married team, it was always an advantage for agencies because like we were always available, we were always easy to get in touch with, and we could solve problems pretty quickly. But that is a struggle now that we share a child together, and like we're not really available on nights, or not really available on weekends anymore.
Let me ask you this though: do you think that it's way better with 10 years under your belt than it would have been 2 years in? Because don't you think you're a little bit better? Aren't you better now than you were?
We're faster. We're a lot faster, and we know what ideas are worth chasing, and we know, like I said, like I'm better at translating what people are, what their real motives and ambitions are for a project, so I can answer what they need faster. So it's definitely helped. Like I don't think there's really usually a reason to work nights and weekends, as long as people aren't, like as long as everything works efficiently.
One thing that I really admire about your book, your portfolio, your career so far is your collective management of the projects that you've gotten on, and your ambitious and sort of relentless pursuit of variety and stimulation. And really, there's no There's nothing about any of your work that feels like the other work. Everything feels like it was organically coming out of the problem, organically coming out of that brand.
Thanks.
But one of the things I wanted to ask you about was the Red Bull architecture part.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this. Go ahead and explain what the project was. The question I want to ask the question, but I'm going to hack what the whole setup was. But I know it wasn't an advertising assignment. How did you manage to get yourself onto that? Was the question, and explain for the listeners what the project was and how you managed to get onto it.
So while we were at Sidley in Amsterdam, Sidley had a pitch for Red Bull's new headquarters. So they had an architecture wing that is really successful. They make beautiful work, and they brought in the team from Montreal to pitch this work to Red Bull. And while they're going through the pitch process, we kind of caught wind of it, and it was the whole reason why we were there.
Did you ask?
Yeah, we just kind of like found our way into concepting sessions.
Like, this is what I'm asking. What do you mean you found your way into concepting?
Well, it just was that kind of environment.
Okay.
Where it's small, creative teams sat right next to each other,
Okay.
and we were able to kind of like push our way onto the pitch itself and kind of help brand the space of the Red Bull space entirely.
Yeah, I just think that's so cool. I just think that there's a mentality that would be like, well, that's not ours. I shouldn't do that or whatever. But I got to give credit equal parts to you and Steve, and also the agency's sort of culture, right?
Yeah, that was definitely a huge part of Sidley's creative culture, is that they actively encouraged cross-pollination between disciplines.
What's the best thing about TBWA Chiat Day LA right now?
It's going through a lot of changes, so I'm really interested to see how it shakes out. We have a really awesome CCO, Renato, and he's Brazilian.
What's his full name?
Renato Fernandes.
Mm-hmm.
And he came to Chiat like 2010. And after running his own agency in Brazil, he took an ACD job at Chiat.
No.
And he just pushed his way up. Of like, he initially was working on Visa, and then he worked on Gatorade.
What
and
is
then,
he?
What? He's an art director.
Mm-hmm. Well, Brazilian.
He's one of the greatest at it too. And he is just I think he came to Chiat like a lot of people come to Chiat because they believed in Lee Clow.
Yeah.
And
he's one of the most inspiring people I've ever been in the same room with in my entire career ever.
Yeah.
Or life.
Yeah. He's amazing. And so anytime he even enters the building, you can just feel it. So there's been a couple CCOs since Lee left that I don't think could have ever filled the void that Lee left, but I think Renato offers something in the same realm of Lee, but totally different, and I'm excited to see where he's able to take the agency.
It's just fascinating to me from a sociological perspective what an advertising agency is. And you said this earlier, it's just the people that are there.
Yeah.
I mean, the name means nothing.
It means nothing. Yeah, it's about who you work with.
It's really
and who you work for. I would say that the creative director probably that you work for matters more than the agency or even the brand.
Absolutely. That's really, really true. So what personal trait of yours, what do you think it is about Liz Cartwright that has served you well so far in your career? Served you best? I
think coming up with a creative idea and then never dropping it until it's made. I think I went through a couple of pieces in my book that took 2 years to get made. The documentary took 2 years. The Pacific Standard Time also was a 2-year project because so many other creatives just dropped off of it, but Steve and I just hung on to it because we knew there was something there.
So these will probably be classified as content. So this Intel documentary was about this big gaming tournament final thing, and the Pacific Standard Time was an architecture.
It was a Getty initiative to bring all the museums of LA together to celebrate one big exhibition.
It's really, really cool stuff.
It was awesome. But both of those projects were really long hauls. And
dude, that is the hardest thing. That is the hardest.
Yeah.
That, in my memory of working, especially at the big agency in New York, which shall remain nameless. It was the moment when you know you have lost. It's almost like when you're dating someone, you know it's the time you're supposed to break up. It's that moment when you're like, I just want this project off my desk. And if you cannot let that happen, if you like it, if you cannot get to that point, can this just go away now and actually say, wait a second, this is now a new problem to solve. This is now a new opportunity for me. Then you end up with amazing work.
Yeah.
You end up with just incredible work.
Yeah, like both of those projects were projects that a lot of people didn't believe in right away either. Like it just took a long time to convince people that it was something that deserved funding. And I think if I'm good at anything, it's just not letting go.
Wow. Well, I said it in the format, resilience beats brilliance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great to have both in your case. Okay, so the question I ask every guest, if you listened to this before, I know you've listened to this before, so if you could go back in time to exactly 10 years ago when you walked out of this building, what would you whisper in young Liz's ear, knowing what you know now?
I would tell her to have fun earlier.
Have fun earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've always equated the concepting phase as like vomiting a rainbow. And it can be a real grind, and or at least the way I was treating it was as if it was a grind and something painful, and then
vomiting in a bad way because vomiting sucks.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because vomiting sucks.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, not that anything beautiful ever comes from vomiting, but if it's a rainbow,
right? Sure. No, it's beautiful.
I think.
So wait. So was the notion there that like goodness comes from pain? Like you have to suffer to get there?
No, I think it's just the kind of creative that I am. Like, concepting, the way I was treating it in the beginning was work.
Discomfort's a better word than pain. Like it comes from being there's discomfort, there's
like
labor.
It's scary. You get a brief. You're like, how am I going to answer this? Every time I got a brief, I would always swing for the fences. Like I was always hoping to make something brilliant with it. It didn't always happen, but it's always my goal. And getting there can be really, really stressful if you feel like you're not meeting it. But what I didn't realize is the stress isn't necessary, and that once I started figuring out how to just like goof off and have more fun and loosen up, I started really loving my job again.
Yeah, I think that's what I meant when I said don't be right. I think of you as an intellectual. You approach this in an intellectual way. You apply intelligence to it, and tempered with fun and humor, which you naturally have. I think that's why the work is starting to sing in your book. It's really great to see really great work. It's kind of like this parental pride to see alumni come back here just doing so well. It's really amazing.
I'm curious to know if that's a piece of advice that you have to give often to your students, to not be right, or if that was
more and more often now. Okay. For a different reason. I think that you are academic and intellectual. I think that you have probably relied on intelligence for most of your life before you took a creative career, and now I think you have to force yourself to enjoy that part of it. Mm-hmm. I think that it's the same advice that I give now, because I think that students coming into the school now have been raised in an American education system that has taught them, that has showed them what they need to know. And they come out of college succeeding by being right.
Yep.
And it's extremely dangerous.
So dangerous.
In a creative career. It's fine for most of the world. It's fine.
I think it's dangerous in general, honestly.
Well, you shouldn't accept things. First of all, you should question everything. Mm-hmm. And that's not in the nature. So it's not a matter of, yes, it's the advice I find myself saying in different words very often now. Don't be correct. Be wrong in the right direction. Mm-hmm. I think that makes sense.
It does. It definitely makes sense, because it shapes a big part of the way I think.
That's cool. Well, thank you so much for talking.
Thanks for having me.
This was always fun. It's always good to catch up. Listeners, if you want to reach Liz, can I give out your electronic mail?
Sure.
Liz You've had that email address for
so embarrassing.
Liz Cartwright at gmail.com.
But it's Write.
Yeah, like copyright.
Yeah, but not like Cartwright.
Oh.
I thought it was so clever. In 2008.
Oh, you know what's so funny? You're saying that? I didn't even see your name in copyright as Cartwright. I just saw Liz Copyright. I didn't even think that it's analogous to Liz Cartwright.
Yeah, I don't think many people do.
Now I see it. Now you
But I
said
thought it was really clever.
if you know what, if you had like typed it with a capital C and a capital L,
I see. Probably would be faster.
it would have been stupid.
But yeah.
No, it's cool. And you can reach me at danspodcast@mac.com as always. Make sure you like the Facebook page, facebook.com. If you just search DGMS Podcast, it'll show up there. I'll be back in a couple weeks. Liz, thanks again so much.
Thanks for having me.
Listeners, we'll see you again in 2. See you then. 2 weeks, that is. Bye-bye.